Hello, welcome to Uncommon Leadership. I'm
Hi,
Michael.
I'm Ray.
This is Ray. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teams. And today I'm talking with Ray Myers, who is tech lead of chaos engineering at Indeed.com and host of Craft versus Cruft on YouTube. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Michael.
I'm happy to have you here. In your journey to seeing people as people and leveraging the unique gifts that each person brings, when did you first recognize this might be a valuable approach?
So, one of my earliest memories of this, at least in my professional career, was in my first job. And there was a member of my team that I looked up to a whole lot because they were very fast. They could comprehend the advanced data structures. They were everything that I thought like a good coder was, and they were by all measures. They are a great software engineer, but I noticed that like not everyone felt about them the way that I did. That they were seen as this thing called a knowledge silo, where they, the team just became sort of overly dependent on them and so on. And then there were some people that didn't, they didn't have maybe so much patience with people who couldn't keep up with them. They liked me because I could keep up with them, but not everyone could. And sort of I noticed this disparity where like, management, I wouldn't say they had a problem with him, but they didn't like the situation where there was this knowledge silo and people were, the team was overly dependent on everything going through them, because they just understood the system so well. And then, other people not getting along with them as well. I realized there were more angles to this. Like this person that I thought I wanted to just be like them. Really, they didn't have some of the angles covered, some of the more social aspects of the work. And so that just sort of started me down a journey of broadening my perspective of like, what is it that makes someone who's maximally impactful, and how might you be holding yourself back by ignoring some of the skills?
And what have you found? What's your current definition of someone who is maximally impactful?
Well, it's situational. I think if you're going to be maximally impactful, you have to be curious. You have to be able to understand the leverage points in your situation. So that may mean you need to learn how to write all of the code. That's something that we do that can create impact, but it may also mean you need to recognize when we don't have a coding problem. They've asked for some code, but what really is the issue is that just these two teams never talk to each other. And all the code in the world won't fix that. So I think being more impactful has been a journey of just being more holistically curious about the ins and outs of the situation, what's really making the problem tick. What is the problem, not just the ask.
How do you engender that curiosity in yourself and in others?
Well, I'll always encourage asking why is a simple way. You know, if I start to brainstorm a solution, I'm being asked for something. Recently, someone asked me, "Hey, I'm looking to, you know, y- scrape the GitHub API so we can create some productivity metrics. We're trying to get started with some of those." And I start down the line of like, well, the Dora metrics are pretty good usually, except for this one, and no, no, no. And then I catch myself. Wait, I didn't ask. What are you actually trying to do? Because you've asked me for some metrics. You Metrics are not a deliverable in and of themselves. No one, the numbers are not gonna, be valuable independent of what you do with them. So what are you actually trying to do is just what is the follow up to understand that where's it coming from. Oftentimes you're being asked by someone who wasn't even the original asker, and they might not even know why. So when that happens, keep the curiosity, realize you may need to chase this for a little bit to find out where this is even coming from in a larger organization. That's where to start.
When the curiosity is shut down, and they tell you, just give me the metrics. What do you do with that?
Well, you learn a mental model of who you're dealing with and what they care about. What are their anxieties and interests, you know? And so, yeah, they've asked me to do something. I want to know what the ultimate purpose is. Perhaps they're not interested in what the purpose is. Well, if I care about making them happy, then I better figure out what they do care about. And um, I find that people aren't always good with subtlety and balance. So, like, I do believe very strongly in my own professional judgment, and that, like, I have something to bring to the question of, like, what is actually useful work, what is the responsible work, so on and so forth. But I also very strongly recognize I exist in a system with people with their own motivations, and yeah, if I get resistance, it's because I'm talking to someone about something they don't care about, and I need to find out what they do care about.
How do you do that?
Well, it depends on who they are. But for instance, when I'm, as I often am in the last few years, kind of functioning as a cross team reliability consultant, right? I've gone into a specialty of site reliability engineering. You'll often be then kind of drafted to talk to a group of developers who they don't have a dedicated SRE. You're kind of sort of on consult. Well, I don't know about their world. I've got a whole bunch of great reliability practices in my backpack, but what do they, if I just come up, hey, the most important thing is SLOs and defect rate or whatever, without knowing what their day-to-day experience is, I'm not likely to say something that's relevant to them. So I look for, either I just listen, or if I'm in the position where I get to ask a question, I will try to ask something very open-ended. Like, I used to start with, like, so what are your biggest areas of pain and anxiety? Like, if you get a room full of people to each give you individual answers to what their particular sources of pain and anxiety are, like, that's just so much meat. I love getting information like that. You may have to be more subtle than that. You may not be in such a a setting if you're just talking to your manager or something, like, and you just have met them recently. Maybe you don't feel comfortable asking outright, but you're listening. For just, people will get around to the things they care about. Or if they say, to one of your suggestions, well, we can't focus on, that's not a priority right now. I mean, perfect segue. What is? That's not interesting right now. What is interesting right now? And people ought to, you know, people ought to respond well, I think.
Have you found any cases where they didn't respond to that? Or they were actively not telling you?
I think so. I mean, I'm an individual contributor, even, having been at some higher levels of that. I've only seldom been in management track. Usually I dabble in higher level individual contributor roles. And so, like, the amount that you are not told is huge. And you don't always know the size of that. You hope that you're going to be told the useful things. And there's some abstraction beyond which is all this stuff that's not relevant to you. But I have actually developed just a greater suspicion that large amounts of things I care deeply about in terms of how I'm going to prioritize my work are actually hidden from me. I mean, So that's what I'm saying is that's a you've what you're asking is a huge issue and underrated. I underrated it for most of my career. Um, the biggest time it'll happen is when you just don't have a lot of screen time with someone. If you and I don't talk very often, we might not get to me sharing the things that I thought were just my problem. And I'm not really opening up on how I think, how where my asks are coming from. So just understand who you have a rapport with, who you have developed with that with, to where you can really you think they're going to present you their model of the world, and then who do you have a more passing relationship with, who's more of a wild card, and just know where your unknowns are, I guess.
Do you have tools or techniques that you pull out when you're working with someone where you don't have that depth of background to help you identify what they're not telling you that is really going to help?
Well, I do like looking for pain. Like I said, your sources of pain and anxiety. Even if I'm not asking what's pain, I'm listening for pain. If I That's how it got started. I didn't know initially in my career to look for this, but I would listen to someone indicate that they were in pain somehow, and get really curious about that. And find, maybe some innovative solutions to that. And you start to do that. You do that even in the smallest degree. You start to win people over. You start to become into their fold. So you find small inroads. But a technique that I've been learning about recently that I want to try more is theory of constraints, which is a little more grounded. I've been giving you things that are more like, well, just feel around, ask questions, find something interesting, follow your nose, uh, something more deductive and concrete is the techniques in theory of constraints, which are all about, what is our actual goal and what is getting in the way of it, and how do we surface the various hidden assumptions that are causing things to go wrong. It's very good at surfacing organizational blind spots.
Well, and that sounds like it would work well on everywhere on the spectrum, from clear, hard, technical problem to super squishy, uncomfortable people problems.
Yeah, there are those who would say that theory of constraints is almost universally applicable. Um, I'll see. I'll see what I think about it in a few years of trying to actually use it. On paper, it's brilliant. Like in terms of just using deductive logic in a way that is designed to surface, well, the reason we never address this is because so and so's in a different department than such and such. And so they're just not, they've got these sort of artificial incentives that stop them from cooperating on this. But if we look at what we're really trying to achieve, that doesn't make any sense. It's things of that nature that it's really good at rooting down. Not all problems can be solved with deductive logic, um, but a fair amount.
Do you have an example of a problem that didn't yield to deductive reasoning?
Yeah, I think that I would come at it in the angle of safety culture, but you probably in your leadership practice have similar things where things aren't just going to fit into A causes B causes C kind of a box. um I believe in theory of constraints, which includes deductive logic and cause and effect reasoning, but I also am a site reliability engineer, and I believe that there is no such thing as a root cause, and that even seems in contradiction. But without going into the whole shift in safety science from safety one to safety two, um, there is a shift in thinking of what can we blame some particular event on, to what is it to make a safer system? What is moving safety in a positive direction instead of just avoiding the negative mean? And it has a lot to do with, like, well, people just are active promoters of safety. They're not merely the source of deviations from procedures. So getting better looks like their, improving their situation in a lot of really subtle ways. Uh, you know, and going around talking to people, interviewing them, like I mentioned, and these things don't always have like um the really hard science answers that you would expect in deductive logic, like what makes a system more resilient. Well, it's like kind of how the people work together and adapt and reflect, and are they in just an ergonomic, safe situation? It's very mushy.
Yes. Jerry Weinberg would always say every technical problem is really a people problem,
Mm,
and people problems are always squishy. That's what makes people problems the hard
mm,
ones.
yeah.
Technical problems, there's always a solution that is more or less reasonable that we can get to if we find the right algorithm or approach. With people problems, that's also usually true and often not nearly as clear or as easy to get to.
Mm. And once you have a system that is being used or developed by more than one person, you have, more people problems than you might think.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite story of when those people problems exploded in some spectacular or interesting way?
Well, one that was formative for me was, and I think enough time has passed that this one I'm comfortable talking about. When I was at Carfax long ago, this was my first job. We are in, and it was one of those moments where someone reveals their source of pain. But so this was before I was learning to go around asking, but I was listening. And these were the people, we thought of them as our customers. They weren't the business's customers. They were our internal business analysts that told us what to build. And we discovered that they, at some point someone was saying, well, how'd you find these vehicles, these VINs that exhibited these particular characteristics that you were able to, tell us we need to change some system to respond differently to? How are you finding these? Because these are rare. These are, really precious to us, these test cases. And they said, yeah, there's no answer to how I'm finding them. We just are running hundreds of reports by hand, and that's how we have them, is because just by brute force we found them. And I thought, like, that I was shuddered, actually. Like, I don't know if any other developers in the meeting reacted the way I, like, that's terrible that a person is sitting there and just one by one running these things hoping they're going to find this scenario. And so, I ended up roping in that gifted developer I mentioned earlier, that was a little senior. Was able to take my idea of, like, let's have their life suck less by giving them what ended up becoming, as far as anyone knows, the first vehicle history search engine that has ever been created, um, just for internal use, to find these cars that had particular quirks of history. And this, like, radically changed how they did their operation, like in terms of how our business analysts were able to find cases and you know um, problems, and submit us scenarios. Like, it had just a huge impact. And it's not that it was that hard to do, but we were not And the people who needed it were the people who we do their bidding. They were our, requesters, but they weren't used to requesting things for them. They were only used to requesting things that were for the consumer. So just by opportunistically listening, to like, oh, this seems like it's a massive inefficiency in the process. Like this ought to change, regardless of what our backlog looks like. This is wrong. Um, it was, one of the huge early successes of my career.
Nice. It's a great example of how when we solve problems that we're encountering ourselves, we often end up solving problems that our customers are having as well. And sometimes, such as in your case, giving them a quantum leap in capability. What do you do when you're not able to listen to what's going on?
Yeah. Oh, I've learned to get nervous when I don't have ears on the ground. I've learned to trust hearsay a lot less. Because I used to think surely what they think about what the situation is, I did not give credit to the amount of information that can be lost through team boundaries, through especially power hierarchy. So, I find a way to get there ideally, like, can I uh can I talk directly to them? Can I get some artifact? If not, when I was at my my last job, which was an online pharmacy, there were a number of teams that I came on, and like I told you, first thing I'm meeting with one of them. What are sources of pain and anxiety? They mention a few systems which I hadn't heard of, but I quickly learned I needed to research them. But another thing I did, because I wasn't talking immediately to every team, is I said, hey, where are the retro notes? Or I talk to the scrum masters. Maybe I can't get time with the whole team, but the scrum masters in every meeting with every, so they immediately are able to give me some, summaries, oh yeah, this is an issue, this is an issue, give me some exploration. So yeah, find people that have more exposure than I do, and just whichever people happen to be available, you know. When I was at Morningstar, I'd find like, oh, I can find an intern that seems particularly to know what's going on. And I have trouble getting time with the leads, but the interns always have time for my little questions. So, they're always happy to see me. So, if you just find where the availability is, and someone who's available will usually have more of an insight than you do.
Yeah. So the information is always there somewhere. And even if it's a bit of a detective hunt to find it, there's clues leading us there.
Yeah, it's clues that will tell me who knows more. And maybe the person that I found in the Wikidoc is merely just a person who knows who I should ask next. But, taking all the sources in, and I'm talking, of course, about like problems that exist with one institution. If I had to go around in the world, maybe is a little different, but there's usually a surprisingly rich breadcrumb trail within an institution.
How do you tell what's your specific signals that you found the person?
Finding the person, let's think about what that means. When I think I've found the person, it's not that I've found the person who knows the most about the topic. It's that I have found a person who will talk to me, who knows enough about the topic, and ideally is a little open-minded. Like they care about it enough that they're maybe interested to try some things new, and they have enough free time. Their calendar isn't booked solid. Um, so if I find the expert that they're booked solid, I'm gonna ask them, yeah, who not maybe not in so many words, but I'm gonna like who should I ask? I understand your time is precious. Who should I ask, right? So yeah, to me that's the right person, is someone who's open-minded and um has enough time to talk to me.
You're going after that curiosity again.
Yeah, who will indulge my curiosity and hopefully share it.
Yeah. Is that your primary metric for your own success? The level your curiosity is at?
I don't consider anything a success until things have shipped. Until and it might not be literally shipping software, but until some positive change has been released into the world. Um until then I it's all potential. But I have, so my curiosity is a big driver of my radar. Yeah, I've just got like, this seems interesting. Seems like there might be some value over there, but I don't consider anything a success until it's made it out. And if a week goes by and no value has escaped into the world, I get real antsy.
And what do you do when that happens?
Well, I look for, like, goes back to theory of constraints. I look for the bottlenecks. Like, oftentimes it's because the organization is just of a habit of batching up these really big ideas and really big bets. And maybe I have to kind of buck the system a little bit and say, like, the best way to get your big idea is for us to, find the most important little sliver and ship it at once. But, I try to bring everything I've learned to bear about how we can make batch sizes smaller, do think in smaller bets, smaller experiments. You know, Sometimes you get some institutional resistance on that.
If you were starting over now, back in that first job, what would be the most important shift you would make?
Well, in my channel, the first two episodes are called Ship Value, and the second one is Software Engineering is Social. So I told you about the software engineering is social, one of the early lessons in that one. And we're just talking about, yeah, shipping value, always be shipping value, always be testing your assumptions. So those would certainly be up there. Um, One of the next things that comes to mind is technical strategy cannot exist independent from business strategy. So if you think you know where the technical system needs to go, but you don't know where the business is trying to go, then you don't know anything about what the technology should be doing. And that one's really hard because people go to great lengths to hide business strategy from developers, maybe without even realizing that's what they're doing.
If that's so important to the work that you do, how do you spy that out?
Well, I mentioned asking why, you know, that finds a thread to pull, but I think the answer is different everywhere. Finding the right person in the ways that I talked about, someone who could be the right person and being available and curious with you. Um, as it pertains to the business strategy, that's its own journey in every environment. But it's a lot of look at your sources of signal. Sometimes they're, KPIs, OKRs, the various official channels of communication. But then to have, an almost obstinate level of distrust is unfortunately what I've learned the hard way. In like, there's the signal that you're getting as to what the priorities are, and then, like, yeah, um, that might be right. It might not be. Like, do I really understand the chain of assumptions, all the cause and effect relationships that are supposed to go from the thing, these alleged priorities that are 10 degrees away from where an actual like strategy session happens somewhere? Um, what are all the assumptions that is stacked up into that becomes money? If I don't understand them all, I don't really understand. I don't really trust any action I could take based on them if I don't understand that whole tree. And seeing more of the picture is just a journey. I don't guarantee that I can see it all now.
Right. So you deploy your curiosity, find the right person who will indulge that curiosity and go from there.
Mhm.
This has been a great conversation today, Ray. What else should I ask you?
Well, we could talk a little bit about the Mender.ai project, perhaps.
Sounds great. Let's get right into the next question. Tell us about that.
So, this is something you can check out now, though it'll grow over time. But I've you can probably tell I'm very interested in meeting situations where they are, and trying to understand the in and outs rather than trying to just picture the most perfect way they can be, and you know, just being frustrated that it's not that. And that goes to my approach with code as well. I am a big legacy code enthusiast. I think that most of the value that we're going to get is out of legacy code. And so bringing this around to AI, this is where I found just a big flaw in the way people are talking about AI's impact on software development, because they're talking about that it can write new code. We can already write new code as fast as we need to. That is the most efficient thing that we can do in the software industry. What we're very bad at is maintaining large amounts of legacy code for long periods of time. And guess what? That's the code that's making all the money. If we make some new greenfield project tomorrow based on some great idea, and it's one of the ones of our 10 new ideas that wins, it's just going to immediately become more legacy code. So if we can't manage legacy code, then we're still screwed. So basically, my push and Mender.ai is kind of the label on that, the website to promote that mentality is, if AI is going to help software, it needs to help us own the code we have. It needs to help us fix things, mend things. Um, and so we need to figure out what works and what doesn't, and start putting that together.
Absolutely. There's one thing that's certain besides death and taxes, is that there's more legacy code today than there was yesterday, and even more
Yep.
tomorrow.
Yep.
If people want to follow up with you on Mender AI or any of the other things we've discussed today, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, the easiest ways to reach me right now would be Twitter at Lambda Apocalypse, and on LinkedIn using Catter Life as the LinkedIn alias, but it'll probably be in the show notes here.
Yeah, well,
And on YouTube, my YouTube channel is Craft versus Cruft.
great. What would you like to leave our audience with today?
Well, I can end the way I ended every episode of Craft versus Cruft, but I'll give more of an explanation now. And the quote I always end on is, as Lao Tzu said in the Tao Te Ching, with patience, the most tangled cord may be undone. And what I will exclusively tell you is the reason I say that is because everything that I've been talking to you about this curiosity and finding pain and finding the opportunities, right? it's all just it's part of kind of a I've been trying to codify it, trying to figure out why I think I have something that works better than, some other people who try to be change agents and, you know, run into more walls. Is it's an untangler outlook of the string is hopelessly tangled up, but there is one spot somewhere that is ready to loosen just a little bit. And I just have to find it. I just have to find the change that's ready to happen and have an open mind. It might not be the change that I feel I most want to make, but it's the one that's ready to happen. Um, and that's why I think this is like untangling a cord.
It's a great analogy. Thank you for that. Audience, thank you for being here with us today. Let us know, what did you like? What resonated with you? Where did we perplex you? Help us help you. Contact Ray, contact myself, and have a great day.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for joining us on Uncommon Leadership today. If you found these stories interesting, inspiring, and illuminating, sign up for my newsletter. Hop over to uncommonteams.com and use the form at the top of every page. You'll be the first to know about every new episode of Uncommon Leadership. You'll also discover how you can build uncommon teams. If you'd like to chat about doing that yourself, email me, michael@uncommonteams.com, or use the contact form on my website. Thanks so much.